I'm a 38-year-old Zimbabwean, born 10 April 1980. First, I grew up as a diplomat's son, so I was a young kid. I was in Belgium. I became so proficient in French that my parents had to go study French so that they communicate with their own child. I then moved to America. I went from the age of 5 to 10, at which stage that's when I got my English. At 10 years old, my father was then, his diplomatic run finished and he came back home, and that's when I come home. So the majority of my life I've lived in Zimbabwe, although I've had an opportunity to live in diaspora, because at 10 I ended up going to Hartman House, went to St. George's College. At St. George's College I performed very well. I got 2 A's in Form 3. By the time I went to Form 4 I already had 2 A's at O-level. In total for O-level I got 7 A's and 3 B's. And then I decided to do maths, physics, and chemistry, where I got 11 points at A-level at St. George's College. At that time, I was still young and active, not as big as I am now. So I did play first-team basketball. I played first-team rugby. I was a chess first-team player. I was a dramatist. All of this, if I give you my yearbook, you can verify. You will see deputy house captain. There were so many things that I was involved with St. George's College. I then went back to America to do my first degree, Drexel University. I did a Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics, graduated magna cum laude in 2002. From there on, I spent a year working in a bank in America after graduation, but then at that time my father was appointed the ambassador to China and he invited me over. And I went for 2 weeks, and when I got there, I saw this was a beacon of opportunity, and I never left. I stayed in China and I started, how did I get by? Well, the first thing I did is I used to walk into the shops over there, and you'll see, pardon, you're wearing your Nike shirt. You'd walk into a shop like that, and you see a Nike shirt would cost $5, and in America it would cost $25. So you actually start to say, okay, I want this shirt. Why don't I convince somebody to send me money so I could send that shirt to him? That was part of my first business acumen from literally nowhere, because, you know, so at that time the digital media wasn't very popular, but I'd managed to get into eBay. So I started selling stuff onto eBay. This is an online selling platform that wasn't very popular at that stage, but was growing up. And I managed to convince a lot of people to send money. But what happened, I now got money through Western Union. When I was supposed to buy, I tried to send with the regular post, and it took too long. And you know what happens in business, pardon. Once you've parted with your money, the person wants his product yesterday. So what did I do? I went to go have a chat with DHL. And I said, DHL, I want to send this amount. And they were quite impressed with my spiel. And they gave me an opportunity where they said, you can send out a 50% discount and you can pay at the end of the month. So it meant, pardon, as soon as you sent your money, you could have your product in literally a day or two. I could get a pair of sneakers from Beijing into Texas faster than somebody would send from New York to Texas. And I was selling big time. I know a lot of people at that time I worked with the likes of Crispin Paspanushka, Ngoni Parenya Dworoy, and they can verify we were pushing a lot of sneakers into America. One of my biggest achievements, which I consider when I was in China, was in the 2005 harmonized elections. T-shirts were required for the campaign, and I think at that stage ZANU-PF hadn't been too prepared. They're a bit desperate, and they just approached my dad and they said, Ambassador Mutsvangwa, we need 500,000 T-shirts within a very small time frame. That was about only 2 to 3 months for delivery. I'm proud to say that the 500,000, I managed to procure and identify producers for 200,000 of those T-shirts. One of my biggest achievements was then I proceeded to do my master's over there. I got my master's in economics at the University of International Business and Economics in China. And then in 2007, I decided to come back home. Having spent 4 years in China, I had spent 4 years in America. And I came armed with my bachelor's and my master's. But unfortunately, in 2007, that was at the height of hyperinflation. So at that time, it was very difficult to get a sound job, which is still the case in Zimbabwe right now. And I tried to get into the system. It was fairly difficult for about 2 years. And in 2009, my mom said, Neville, you've got credentials. You've gone to school. Why don't you explore going to South Africa? Perhaps you might be able to apply those skills and get a better remuneration for it. And she was 100% spot on. In 2009, I moved to South Africa. Within 5 to 6 months, I'd managed to secure a job at one of the leading consultancy firms in South Africa. It's called Burlington Strategy Advisors. And I worked with them for a year. And at that time, I was really able to apply my skills in my mind to offer sound strategies, consulting services to quite a number of huge firms. You know, Burlington in South Africa really competes with McKinsey. And that was quite an eye-opening. It allowed me to become very skilled, even in PowerPoint presentations, appreciating how to do SWOT analysis. I had an opportunity at that stage. However, my passion was always to be in Zimbabwe. I have always, even when I was in America, I have to be honest, every holiday I had to come back home. Everybody knew Neville was always about Zim. I was always passionate about Zim. I would spend most of my working in America just trying to buy gifts so I could give family members back home when I came over holiday. So in 2009, when the US dollar, the Zim dollar was removed and the US dollar, we were becoming dollarized, I thought, listen, if Zimbabwe is starting anew, let me go ahead. And I packed my bags here in South Africa and I was home in Zim. And I tried to do entrepreneurial stuff. It was quite difficult. So eventually I got a job. My first job was at Allied Timbers. I was the marketing manager for the truss plant in Masasa. I was with them for about a year. Then an opportunity arose for me to become one of the initial inaugural compliance officers at the National Indigenization Economic Empowerment Board. And I was there for just under a year, and that we were really creating and crafting the policies which indigenization was to be founded on. And I have to admit, I wasn't too happy with what ended up happening, because I thought indigenization didn't necessarily have to be 51-49. I thought it could be a situation where you could get less than 51, maybe even 20 or 30, but still have an influence and still bring the Zimbabwean on board. Anyway, that's history. We know the indigenization past. And then in about 2014, 2013, some time ago now, I was appointed the deputy marketing manager at Angel Diamonds. And that time was a huge responsibility, because there was really no local representative who was looking after the shareholdings of the Zimbabwean interest when it comes to marketing diamonds in Angel Diamonds at the time. All the marketing was being predominantly done because it was a joint venture between a Chinese company and a Zimbabwean entity. So I had to come on board, make sure that the Zimbabweans get their due regarding. And I'm quite proud to say that during that time, I made sure that Zimbabwe could get the best price that it could for its diamonds in my capacity as the deputy marketing manager of Angel. So unfortunately, in about 2015, the new minister came on board. He pushed an idea of consolidation, which I didn't particularly agree with, because here you had so many investors on board who had put in money. Now you want to consolidate the industry, and I'm not sure how you're going to, pay for the people who put in their money. But anyway, what was done was done. There were 7 mines and they had to be made into one. Unfortunately, since I wasn't supportive of the idea, I knew I'd never be selected as that marketing manager. And so my position at Angel ended, and I then became a full-fledged entrepreneur, I can say. So since 2015, I have had quite a number of positions. One of them, I was the vice president for Fumiko Wadiki, and we would obviously spend quite a number of time lobbying for empowerment to the young people in Zimbabwe. I was also the national policy coordinator for the National Business Council of Zimbabwe, and we also at Ground TV do a lot of lobbying to provide a platform for small businesses to thrive in Zimbabwe. One of my biggest achievements, which I would consider greatly proud of, was in 2016 March. I was appointed to the board of Zimbabwe National Parks. And to be very honest, at that time, I was like, oh, maybe I should have been on the board of Emma or Zimmer. Nobody was quite familiar with what parks was about. But it's when I got onto there, I recognized that this is a $25 million entity annually revenue, and that employs over 2,300 people directly. And when we're talking about the industry as a whole, with the other stakeholders and everybody else, it quite easily can be a $500 million industry. The wildlife sector is definitely something that can uprise and lift our economy if we focus on it. And one of the things I take a lot of pride in is that I was the chairman of the Business Development Committee, And in 2016, to end of 2015, Parks had a revenue deficit or loss of negative 5 million. And in my 1 year at that time, at the helm of the business on the board, I managed to close that gap so that they could break even after 1 year. And at that time, I'm also quite glad that we did a human resource audit, and we tried to address as much and as many of the concerns of all the employees. You can imagine 2,000, you will not be able to make everybody happy, but we did try our best in that regard. Since then, my term ended because the board was dissolved early this year, around March. And since now I submitted my CV, and NASA has submitted my name as to be on the board of Ariston Holdings, which has been run on the social media. I just want to make it clear out there that I did submit my CV in regard of the fact that I've got a Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics, a Master's in Economics, and I'm currently halfway through my doctorate. I forgot to mention I started my doctorate at the University of Lusaka in 2015. And I'm quite glad to say I'm about halfway there. My topic and my thesis is evaluating measures to reinstate a currency that was devalued by hyperinflation and lessons for Zimbabwe. And it's something which I'm thinking that is very pertinent to exactly what is going on in the world, in Zimbabwe today. So I had a chance, I spoke to I was interviewed by top management of Zimbabwe. I went very well prepared, very well researched. And I always try to tell people that I wanted to join the Ariston board, not so much about my own remuneration. I don't even know what the package was, but it was simply going on to be able to be attached to a profitable agricultural conglomerate business in Zimbabwe. Because one of my frustrations with Zimbabwe has been that through our land reform, and I totally agree with land distribution, I agree with taking it from the former few white farmers and distributing to the many. But what I'm concerned about now is for government to try and hold on to the leases. I would have been a firm proponent of government giving out title deeds to the new people on board, so that each individual farmer is able to walk into the bank in his own capacity and try to raise capital for himself. The challenge which we've got right now with the leases is that most banks, because they don't understand or can't really appreciate the security of the lease, are not willing to lend. And then you have a situation where the only entity that's capable of raising money is government on its own. And that's never a good sign for anything. There's a quote that I put on my page, Diaspora Village, which says the mark of a successful country or a wealthy country is not where the wealthy drive their cars, but where the wealthy use public transport. Now, this is a situation in Zimbabwe where we're not getting that, where if you want to make money, you constantly have to go to government. Everything is focused on government. And that's why I really want to go out to the diaspora to say, can you please, let's work together. Let's give ideas so that we can tell our government that we need to provide an atmosphere for even small businesses can thrive. Not a situation, because that's one of the reasons why people are always looking at government officials. There's so much scrutiny on what they're doing because there's so much pressure on them to deliver for the welfare of the people. And I'm a firm believer that no, this is not the way it's supposed to be. In most countries, the government plays a small role. A lot of businesses can thrive without having to know who's in power. But they continue and make their money and they survive. And unfortunately, that's not the case in Zimbabwe. So I've thrown a bit about myself. I'd like to mention, like I said, I'm a proud alumni of St. George's College. I'm a St. George's boy. And part of it is that we have also one of the founding members of Old Georgians Kubatana, which is an alumni group where we were saying, as the new crop of St. George's boys, because predominantly in the early 60s and 70s, it was mainly white. So the Old Georgians Alumni Association definitely took care of the concerns of white person. But we now know at St. George's College, the majority of the students are black. So we need to have an alumni association that appreciates that. And to that regard, we created Old Georgians Kubatana. And we are an alumni group of predominantly based on WhatsApp. We now got about 500 members. I'm the one who coordinates it predominantly with another 4 or 5 members. And I'm proud to say that just that network alone has managed to bring so much interest back from a lot of St. George's boys, because the most St. George's boys left to go to university abroad and Armenia and diaspora. But through this channel, they have been able to get a grasp a better grasp on what is going on back at home. So to me, those are some of my immediate achievements. One of the things that I take a lot of pride is I'm a proud father of 2 lovely girls. The elder, grade 2, her name is Paidamo, very intelligent at Bishopsley, chubby like her father, she loves her food. And then I've got a young supermodel who's 2 years old. Her name is Nokutenda. I also need to mention I'm the eldest of 4 boys. I'm the eldest son of Christopher and Monica Mutsvangwa. Before me, they were Jaya and Mandara, but I made them Baba Neville, Mama Neville. So I take a lot of pride in that. So yes, that's more or less me in a nutshell, pardon. If I've left anything else, please feel free to throw it about it. I'm a person who firmly believes in bringing people together. Actually, on my old Georgian Skubatana network, they call me Iggy. And Iggy stands for I got you. Because if somebody needs a contact, I'm not going to ask what's it for. I just give it. On the hope that since we're all St. George's boys, you'll use that contact in an effective manner to enhance your life. Because if you enhance your life, in a way, I feel that I've been enhanced in one way or the other. So I strongly believe in networking. I think people know that I'm good with names. I perform very well in the banking sector because I could almost greet every client by name. I make it a point of networking to the best of my ability. I feel that for people to succeed, it's not necessarily one person wanting to do everything, but trying to harness the skills of so many that you can get a good result in place. And it stems back to what Steve Jobs said, where he said, we don't hire intelligent people to tell them what to do. We hire intelligent people so they tell us what to do. And this is amongst many of the quotes and ethoses that I live by. China was a very, very dynamic time in my life. I was a young man being exposed to a flourishing, budding economy. Still at its it hadn't so much arrived. When I went to Sanlitun, which is one of the biggest, one of the most famous streets in Beijing, there's still a lot of shacks lying around. Now you're not going to see it. You're going to see super high-class malls. But that's when I saw the opportunity. What I want to say, pardon, more for any Zimbabwean is, any Zimbabwean who currently stays in Zimbabwe, who had a family member who would go to China back and forth, I think if you're honest and just, if you have an opportunity, just to ask them, say, what role did Neville play? They'll tell you that I was so keen to give any Zimbabwean an opportunity to know where the shops were. Zimbabweans wanted to know where they could buy clothes so that they could resell them. I would take them and show them. Zimbabweans wanted to know where they could buy TVs. I would make an effort to take them and show them. I was so keen to provide, to make Beijing a more friendly place for any Zimbabwean. Even if they got lost, they could give me a call. I would speak to the taxi driver to say how you can get around. Yes, I must say it was a good time for me. I was the son of the ambassador. But on that regard, I still made an effort to do my businesses. Like I said, I would go into the shops, I would buy sneakers, I would send them to America so that they could be sold there. I would open up websites where I put pictures and people could buy clothes online. There was so much going on in China, yet at the same time, I was still able to do my master's degree. And during that time, I was able to be exposed to a lot of other young dynamic Chinese people who I'm still in touch with today. China is a very complex country. Anybody's been there. I had an opportunity to travel to at least 20 or 30 cities. When I interact with Chinese in Zimbabwe and I tell them how many cities I've visited, they actually get shocked and say I haven't even been to a third of those. It's also an opportunity where I managed to play rugby, and at that stage the Chinese are generally small, so I used to perform very well on the rugby field at that time, and I was able to travel and visit and build a camaraderie based on my rugby playing skills. And it allowed me to travel in the region to Seoul, South Korea, to the Philippines. So I had a huge opportunity to see the growth and potential of what Asia can offer. I was so keen to get into business, and I didn't want to dedicate too much time in learning the language. So a lot of other students would have to spend a year learning the language, and they would do their course in Chinese. I actually found a course, one of the initial courses that were being offered in English. So I used to actually go part-time at work, and I'd go just for classes. Although I was given a full scholarship, which meant I was given the accommodation at school, I was provided with meals, but I never stayed at school. I had my own apartment. I was running my own business of selling and buying goods and selling it all over the world and assisting Zimbabweans to do business. So from that perspective, I think I performed particularly well because obviously since it was in English, I could express myself a lot better. It was an international class. You had a lot of Filipino people, a lot of Chinese people in it, a lot of Indonesians all coming in to be part of this course. But because I had the English background, I was able to put myself across a lot better. So for me, that was an opportunity where I was able to apply my mind and gain a lot of skills and also appreciate how China managed to develop its economy. You know, a lot of Chinese always say, Zimbabwean, at that time you can't feed yourself, you're only 12 million. We feed 1.3 billion people. But you need to understand that in the 50s, there were people starving. And within a 20-year period, they became self-sustaining when it comes to providing food for its own people and growing food. How did they achieve that? I had to study and appreciate that. So when I look at Zimbabweans, sometimes they want to look at the color of skin with regards to money. That no, we don't want investment from the Chinese. We don't want investment from whatever. My theory is simple. Let everybody come to the table. That competition is what arises to you getting the best result. Not trying to hold somebody and say, no, from our experience, the Chinese don't offer good investment. Or from our experience, we've noticed that the British offer better investment. I don't want to work with history or whatever has been the case. What I'm saying is to provide a platform now where anybody who is interested to come on board can come on board. Don't stop anybody. Let everybody come with their best offer. What has happened in Zimbabwe for a long time is that we tend to demand what the market is not willing to pay. The Chinese are going to be a player, whether you want it or not. They just have too much money. They've got too much money and you have to recognize them. The Chinese now have got an appreciation for the Zimbabwean market. What you would want to do though in any kind of selling structure is to build a rapport with some of the Chinese and try to first visit them, have an appreciation of the quality. Once you've identified the quantity, try to negotiate for them to allow you to give you stock on consignment so that you're not having to expense too much and outlay too much money up front. Obviously, the Chinese would want to have an appreciation of what your capacity is. So this is where you need to sell, where you're going to sell from, your shop. Try and sell which kind of network. If you can sell how you sold before, so that you can get the Chinese to part, because then they essentially become a partner into what you're doing. It means that they're going to give you quality product because they know that if you don't sell, they would have lost out because they would have put some money down. And then you need to try and figure out ways how you can get a number of people so that you don't necessarily use air freight, but to use shipping options to get in. But obviously for that, you need the bulk. It needs to be economies of scale. But then you reduce the cost. Because right now, we know in Zimbabwe that there's not a lot of disposable income. So you need to try and bring as much quality as possible at the cheapest possible price.
Okay. So, Neville, we've talked a lot about your life. What do you think is the future in Zimbabwe?
Yes, you know, I'm inspired by what is happening right now because a lot of young people are coming to the forefront. I'm pretty keen and I really want to get into Townhouse this time because I know there's going to be dynamic, robust debate in Townhouse because you're going to have an amalgamation of skills from young, talented people who've been educated well, who are going to play a role in trying to uplifting Harare to make it the Sunshine City again. So in that regard, there's a really dynamic shift because before, you know, Townhouse would never be, it would just be the older generations and some people who just take it for the sake of taking it. But now you've got passionate people who are coming on board who want to make a genuine difference. I'm very glad with the new platform that is there, the new dispensation, which is giving people an opportunity to have the freedom to vote in the manner in which they desire. You know, I was so amazed when I saw Nelson Chamisa walk into the National Sports Stadium on the 18th at the Independence celebrations. And he was acknowledged by his people walking freely, and ZANU-PF gave him the time. You know, to me, that's political maturity. You're walking in town now, you can have a ZANU-PF t-shirt and an MDC t-shirt walking hand in hand. They're buddies and mates. There's that political maturity which you've not seen for a long time. And that is going to provide for a healthy democracy. I'm going to go onto the ZANU-PF ticket, but I'm going to show you, I would want MDC to get a bit of seats in Parliament because it's healthy to have a debate. That is what keeps people on their toes. If something where you're just all in and you've got no questions involved, then things don't get questioned. I think now you're going to have a new situation where bills are not just going to be sailed through. People are going to have to convince the other members of parliament what exactly they're trying to lobby for, what exactly they're trying to achieve. It's not just going to be strictly on party lines, but it's going to be on the merit and the substance of the bill that is being presented. I'm quite convinced that we're going to have a new Zimbabwe. I'm quite convinced that we're going to be able to have economic reforms. I always tell people, I'll give people the best example. 20 years ago, it would have been shunned upon to have a white farmer assisting you with your farming. It would have been low, no, kutengesa, ajite. But fast forward now 18 years, they're saying you can come up with smart partnerships. I'm hoping in 2-3 years' time, we can push to get people to have title deed. Because I'm very firm believer of title deed. I believe that the issue of title deed is preventing diasporans from really investing in their country. Because if a small person has a small piece of land, he can go and say, and diaspora say, it's yours, you own it, okay, fine, this is yours, I will assist in this regard. What is happening now is that we're forcing everybody to farm on land, which might not be the most viable economic thing to do. I've said it several times that if you go into high fields, because a person owns a title deed, he can have his house be a restaurant, it can be a shop, it can be a nursery, it can be a creche, it can be a massage parlor, it can be anything that it be converted to create revenue, because he's got a title deed. But with what is happening with the lease, we're trying to push everybody to farming, and the reality is we just all can't be farmers. And this is why we're seeing in a situation where we're forcing people, we're force-feeding people into an economy which might not be ours. If it is to be, if we are to be the agriculture hub again, let it come naturally. Let it not be by government constantly trying to put in money and resuscitate it as what is being the case. Let commerce thrive. Let the people work and on their own basis on a proper return. Then people will produce enough. You have the laws of supply and demand come into play. In this case right now, you go to Mbare and you can see that produce is being thrown in, which means that things have been overproduced. So for me, I want a Zimbabwe where we can have robust discussion. People come out and say, no, this is what we need to do so we can take the country forward. And what is it now is that I have put my name forward to stand to be the councillor in Ward 18 in Harare North. That's Borodale predominantly, Pomona, Chishawasha, Helensville, amongst many other places. And my core reason for this is I'm saying that I am convinced that with the young people of residing in Harare North, the established businessmen who have succeeded, because to stay in Harare North, it's not cheap, and permitting, I call it the ward of Zimbabwe, because if you have the funds and you have the money, any Zimbabwean would desire to own a piece of real estate in Harare North, in Borodale. So I call it the ward of Zimbabwe. And I'm convinced if I can take the energy of the youth who are residing there, the capacity and resources of diaspora who would want to reside there, and also take the knowledge, wisdom of those who have managed to excel and survive and be able to buy a property there, we can literally convert Harare back to the Sunshine City. And I feel that for many years I've been advocating, like I said, I've been advocating for a title deed. So let's empower the people. And I feel with a position in Townhouse, I'll be able to make a difference.